So today we launched both a terminology guide, which is an online resource for journalists and editors and newsrooms, as well as a book to complement the terminology guide that has been written by academics, where they go into more academic detail about what the most contentious words are. For example, the 10 most contentious, which include Islamism, Allahu Akbar, Jihad, Sharia, which we also include in our terminology guide, but we have almost 100 terms that we find that are used and misused within the media. And what we've done with the guide is look at the word as it was originally used in the Quran and the Hadith, and then looked at scholarly interpretations, and then given recommendations to newsrooms as to how they should use it or when they should avoid it, or alternatives as well. Because we find that, when you look at Islamism, Islamic terrorism or Islamic extremism, Sharia, how that's always interpreted as being a penal code punishment or a parallel legal system when it's not, or Allahu Akbar having been appropriated by terrorists as a war cry, whereas it's, a term that we use 5 times a day in our prayers and all the other times. So all these terms have been used by the media in a way that has securitized Muslims and put them within a paradigm of extremism and violence and terrorism, even when those terms in their original context and meanings have absolutely nothing to do with violence. So those are just some of the contentious ones. Things like Londonistan, which has become a term now, and Islamization, which is a far-right trope of Muslims taking over not only London, but Britain and Europe. So all these influences that have come from far-right are now in mainstream media, and what we're trying to do is dispel these myths, but also get the media to stop using problematic terminology, because it creates a manufactured consensus that basically Muslims are violent, Muslims are extremists, Muslims are terrorists. So we want to move away from that. So we're hoping both the terminology guide, the portal that's online, and the book is going to be the basis of us engaging with media outlets for them to start using these resources to inform themselves and to implement them into their editorial policy guidelines, so that when they come across, a story that they're reporting, and even if it's a simple term like Eid al-Fitr and they don't know what it means, we have provided a definition, what it means, when it is, that they can refer to, so that when they report it, they're actually getting it correct.
This book came about with my discussion with Miqdad Versi of the Center for Media Monitoring, where we, after my previous book publication, which was Religion in the Media, Linguistic Analysis, where I looked at the 3 Abrahamic faiths, I moved on to work on Islamophobia in the media, and I wanted to know what is the next way forward, and how do we think about, as a linguist, how do we use language more effectively, or look at the way the language is used in the media and how to analyze that and how to make more impact for the community in the future. And then Miqdad started working on this CfMM style guide, and then we thought that, okay, there would be a book where the major terminologies on Islam and Muslims are taken up as an academic evidence. So when we publish, the style guide is published, but what are the academic evidences? So some of the major terminologies like jihad, Sharia, Allahu Akbar, Islamic extremism, Islamism, these terminologies have been taken in this book so that we provide evidence that how they affect the real Muslims.
This book tries to help both the politicians and the media to understand how the language has its consequences. We've seen in the past, when you see the Prime Minister using this headdress of a Muslim woman and saying letterbox, that had consequences because the hate crimes increased over 300%. Similarly, we've seen now in Gaza, the whole reporting of the situation, how it has been biased. We've seen the political leadership, how they use those who are marching for peace to be hate mongers. So these are the examples of how the damage is done. So this book helps both the media and the politicians.
It's an absolute honor to be part of a launch of this and hosting this very, very important book. And it's about the language that is used in the media, launched here by the Media Monitoring Centre. It is really, really important to have this resource available for the media to access, to understand the terminology, because language is power, and that power, the use of language, has the ability to affect people in their everyday lives. So we know the terminology that is used by the media is problematic, and to change that. So this book goes a long way, and I'm really, very pleased to have hosted the launch today alongside my colleague Afzal Khan.
So as a hijabi Muslim woman living in the UK, I feel like the book that has recently been published, A Media Language on Islam and Muslims, Terminologies and Effects, is really important for Muslims to read and understand, because what it does is it gives a vocabulary to explain how Muslims have been affected by the media language, which lots of Muslims don't have. From reading the chapter on Allahu Akbar, for example, I realized how subconsciously I would avoid using it in public, but something that not all Muslims think about actively, but only by thinking about it actively can we think about changing how we use it, how we might try to reclaim it in public spaces, how we might try to talk to other communities more about the terms in our religion. But without knowing and realizing that we subconsciously are monitoring ourselves so as not to, play into the media stereotypes, we do ourselves a disservice by not trying to actively counteract those stereotypes. So reading this book gives you that vocabulary and the ability to counter the stereotypes that are represented in the media, and then hopefully change the views of people living in the UK and foster better community relations, inshallah.
We were discussing use of terminology and how even holy words and good words in the wrong association can become bad words, and public doesn't know what it actually means. So my suggestions to Naz, the Labour representative here today, Member of Parliament, was that perhaps to give those words the right association they deserve, they should be used by people in the right context. For instance, you could use it in the Parliament by reciting Bismillah before she begins.
In terms of the uniqueness of this book takes on interdisciplinary approaches towards the language or terminologies that the media use about Islam and Muslims. So academics from different disciplines have contributed for using their own academic expertise, but with the same theme, that how they affect British Muslims and how the representation affects Muslims. The other unique feature is the incorporation of a chapter by Miqdad Versi of the Muslim Council of Britain about his experience of fighting against inaccuracies and Islamophobia in the media. So you don't find normally academic books having practitioners, non-academics contributing. So this is a unique feature in it, because this is an element of knowledge transfer or partnership of academics with community.